Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for another amazing Power to Fly chat and learn situation. I'm so excited to get started and introduce you to our amazing speaker. But before we do, we're going to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. First up, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. If this is your first Power to Fly event, thank you so much for coming. My name is Meg Alexander. I'm part of Power to Fly's virtual hosting team, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Now, you can see some of the housekeeping items and some of like the general rules of like how this whole situation works for us on that screen in front of you. But as we go through, I just want to highlight a couple things. And somebody's asking about turning on transcriptions. Thank you for the reminder. I'm doing that right now. There we go. Okay, so that way we should be able to have this all set up for you and ready to go. There we go. Okay, so as we get started here, I want to highlight that, like all of our virtual events, today's session is all about you. It's about our attendees, our community, and we want to make sure that the time that you spend with Power to Fly is well worth it. So if you would like to participate, like we obviously encourage you to today, I want to tell you a couple different ways you can do that. So you can turn on your cameras like we've been talking about. You can also come off mute if you have questions. However, we're not going to do that until later in the session. If you do want to come off mute to ask your questions, I just want to highlight that if you have any kind of privacy concerns, if you do come off mute for whatever reason, you will show up on the live recording of today's session. So if you have any kind of privacy issues, do not sweat it. You can still participate. You can send questions or comments for our speaker into the Zoom chat, or if for whatever reason you would like to stay like super deep cover, Black Ops, no one knows you're here, but you still want to ask questions or comment, not a problem. Just DM me. Instead of sending the chat or sending your question or comment to everyone, just send it to me instead in the little drop-down menu on the Zoom chat. So as we get going here, I also want to highlight that the session obviously is being recorded. So if you have any questions, or sorry, if you worry that like maybe you missed something, or if Shamla comes off with something that's just like absolutely amazing and you just cannot wait to share it with a coworker or a friend or a relative, you don't have to wait. So everyone that registered for today's session, regardless of whether you even show up, hi future viewers, or if you stay for 5 minutes, you stay for the whole thing, you join and come back and then leave and come back again, doesn't matter. Everybody is going to get an email in about 1 to 2 business days that will have a link to where you can rewatch this recording on our website. Now, like I said, if you are, something that Shamla says is just mind blowing and you cannot wait to share it, you don't have to. You can head on over to our YouTube channel. We have two. There's like a base one and then a dedicated Chat and Learns one. So if you head over to Chat and Learns, this recording will be posted there probably within about 5 to 15 minutes at the end of today's session. So as you can see in the center here, there's also a point about live closed captioning. So definitely take advantage of that. I see that my colleague Paloma has put it into the chat thread already. And yeah, I think the rest of it we'll just cover as we go. So I'm really excited to talk to you because obviously Shamla here is from the Facebook team and they are currently hiring. So I'm going to share some links with you to where you can connect with Facebook on Power to Fly's website. I'll throw that into the Zoom chat right now. There you go. Now, if you follow the link I just put there, that's going to lead you to Facebook's company page on powertofly.com. Now, what that's going to be like, that'll tell you a bunch of different things. You can find out a lot of info there, things like information about the company. If you click on events, it'll show you things like today's Chat and Learn or other events that they are partnering on with us, as well as obviously check out Facebook's open roles. Now, it looks like currently, let's see here, there's quite a lot of roles posted. I think we're up to 3224 right now. So if you're interested in those open roles, definitely go through there. You can search, you can filter to really get kind of what you're looking for. But one thing I also want to highlight is that whether you are if you go to this page, when you look at the upper right hand corner, there'll be a big pink follow button. That is a really important place to check out and a great feature. If you click on that, it's going to put you on Facebook's follow network, and it basically does two things for you. It's going to keep you on Facebook's radar. It tells them you're interested in working with them even before you submit an application. but it's also going to keep Facebook on your radar. So it's going to let you know when they post new roles. That's a really awesome thing and an awesome feature that Power to Fly has if you're job hunting. But it's also really awesome if you are maybe not actively searching, but you're here and what you hear about Facebook today makes you curious about them. It's a really great way to keep tabs on companies that you find interesting, even if you're just part of the 40% of Americans right now who are curious to see what else is out there and taking a look around. So definitely take advantage of that feature. Now, I'm really excited to introduce you to our speaker today. So Shamla Bandla is currently the Director of Production Engineering for the monetization space at Facebook. That includes Facebook ads, marketplace, and commerce and business platforms. In 2019, she was named one of the top 100 women of influence by Silicon Valley Business Journal. And sorry, my thing is in the way here. There we go. She's also the founding member of firstboard.io, where she and other women leaders work together with a mission of having more women on boards. She's deeply passionate about driving diversity initiatives, both within the company as well as within the tech industry. And she invests time in mentoring other women in tech, which is obviously so valuable right now, as always. Outside of work, she enjoys hiking and biking with her family. She has 2 children, a son who's 14 and a daughter who's 10. She enjoys vegan cooking and promoting a healthy lifestyle. So Shamla, welcome to today's Chat and Learn. I'm so excited to dig in. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience before we jump into questions?
First of all, thank you so much, Meg and Power to Fly and Facebook for giving me this opportunity and having. I can't wait to share some of my experiences, and hopefully, even if I can 0.1% influence through my journey and experiences, I will feel very, very happy. Just to share, I mean, personally, I grew up in India, and I was just sharing Meg earlier as we were getting ready. I traveled a lot in India. So very early on was exposed to different cultures, because people who are from India know each state is different. And when I moved to US, I had this opportunity to work in completely different companies, some by design, some not by design. And all of them happened to be in different domains of experiences. For me, it was a blast of learning experiences with each and every role I picked up. So can't wait to share some of my experiences and learnings.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're so excited. I'm really, really geeked to get started. And I just want to highlight for everybody, if you are, loving the content that we're bringing you and you're enjoying these chats, please feel free to take photos or video as we go. You're more than welcome to share on social media, places like Facebook. You can tag us to help spread the love. We are at Power to Fly on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And we also have some Power to Fly hashtags we use, all that kind of stuff. So please feel free to do that. Let's see. Okay. So, but as we get going here, I'm really excited to talk a little bit about the themes that we're going to cover in today's conversation. So, as you'll see here, we're going to throw them up on the page. What we did is we had conversation with Shamala prior to today's session, as well as by looking at the questions that y'all submitted prior to today's session, like when you were registering. Now, what we did is we kind of, we took all those questions, we distilled them, and we tried to arrange them in a conversational format. So the things you see, like the points you see on the screen right now, are what we're going to try and go over today. However, if you have questions and you want to make sure that they are answered, please feel free to throw those into the chat box. You can also, if we address one of your questions and maybe we're just not quite getting it, maybe we're not reading the question in the way you intended, please feel free to add more context or details. Just let us know that. If you do want to come off mute to do that, that's totally great. We absolutely encourage it. Just keep in mind, try not to interrupt Shamala or one of our other attendees. You can always use the raise your hand feature if you're a bit uncertain. Whereas for me, I am totally fine with you interrupting me because I get paid to fill the silence. So make sure that if you have questions, you get them answered. Okay, so we're going to try and talk about some actionable steps to start fostering that growth mindset that Shamla is going to talk to y'all about. We're also going to talk about some of the best practices for networking to help build a support system for yourself. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can inspire collective leadership, which I think is a really awesome idea to really get talking about and start spreading around. We're going to talk about ways that you can empower others on their professional journeys, because obviously, doing these things for yourself is great, but doing them for others feels even better. And it helps us all to achieve these goals that we have about, gender parity in the workforce, and really getting, teams that represent the clients that we serve, representing the world we live in. And then we're also going to talk a lot about ways to build your confidence by highlighting your accomplishments. So if we're talking about or going into any area that you would really like to dive deeper in, please feel free. Like, we want you to understand that y'all can drive the session today. So please feel free to, call out if you would like to dig in on it deeper on any topic. All right, so to get us started with some of our first questions here, Shamala, I'd love if you could give us like a brief breakdown of the idea of a growth mindset. I think it's one of those things that maybe means a little bit different things to different people, and I'd like to make sure we're starting all on the same page.
Yeah, I think it's important to context, set what growth mindset really means. I mean, this is a number one question. Like when I'm mentoring and coaching, how do you build a muscle for a growth mindset? But before I share my experiences, I think let me explain what growth mindset is. Again, this is from my own personal learnings. See, often we think that, with our skills and talents, it's growth is all associated with what we always had or we were gifted. Growth mindset is actually not about that. It is basically, truly believing in the learning, not focusing just on the outcomes. I had in a hard way sometimes, and fortunately I had mentors who kind of helped me to like shift my thinking, like focus on the outcomes, not to focus on the outcomes, but focus on the journey, and really focusing on the learnings, both failures and successes. And for me, you will be surprised, a lot of the learnings actually came to me when things were not going perfectly. And shifting that mindset to that helped me not to be super critical. As women, we are super critical, we strive for perfection, but growth mindset actually really elevates you to see the big picture. How do you get to your big goals, but treating this as a journey? It also creates a mindset and builds a muscle. You become more confident with risk taking, and also what are you learning from the risk taking, right? And that is the most important thing. Like anything can be learned, with sheer hard work, dedication, and that's what I think growth mindset like really, really helps.
Awesome. Thank you so much for covering that for us. Okay, so to get us started with some of our first questions, this one was asked in a lot of different ways. So I think this is going to be something that really kicks off a lot of really interesting responses, as well as hopefully the helpful things for the rest of our attendees. A lot of people wanted to know about how they could increase their visibility to leadership. And I think this is, something that people want for a variety of different reasons. So is there one kind of method that you can sort of play off of, or are there maybe different ways you should do this depending on what you want that visibility to accomplish for you?
That's a great question. Again, as I mentioned in the growth mindset, visibility also, there is no magic recipe and it happens overnight, right? Trust in the process. It's again a journey. You have to build this slowly. You have to really build allyship. And it's always not with just your top management. I think that is another misconception, right? Bringing visibility to your leadership, it's always focusing on upward. That is not true at all. At least I can vouch from my own experiences. Do the right thing for the team, do the right thing for the business. The visibility to the leadership will actually automatically and organically happen. Build a support system. Often just not within your team. The support system can be even your customer. It could be even your partners. It could be also in your friend circle. Sometimes we also need the emotional support, right? Be the critic. So all this will help in the journey at your work. But as I mentioned, the allyship and having the support system, having few trusted peers whom you can run by a very raw idea, which you're not confident and sure. The other is volunteer to represent your team. So always put forward. I'm not saying not be selfish and not do your own career growth plan. But often when you represent your team, and I have a motto which has helped me along all through my career: no problem is someone else's problem. Now, it's very simple words, but when you approach with that mindset, it is no secret sauce, right? People will notice, and they become your allies. They become your vouching partners to your leadership team. Hey, wait a second, Shamla or this person actually helped me unblock in this particular area. And the other thing is, don't shy away asking for high visible projects. Sometimes you may not be aware. Early in my career, I am an introvert by nature, and I'll touch upon that as well. So as career was progressing, sometimes you're not visible, maybe you're not part of those conversations. So have that open conversation with your leaders, sometimes in your reporting chain, sometimes even your partners, and don't shy away having that open conversation. Nothing will hurt. Worst case would be your manager would say, hey, wait a second, you have these XYZ, I would like you to, build a little bit more competency in that area. But I think don't shy away. That's number one. And sometimes you can create as well. So as you build these partnerships, you will start seeing that needle in the haystack, and that as an opportunity. Often, sometimes I've asked, but many times actually, I have ended up creating those opportunities for the team and for myself because of that customer obsession or passion to help the business grow and truly making my team as a business enabler. And this have organically created not only opportunities for me, but the people around me whom I'm supporting or working with.
Okay, so there is a moment in every single one of these chats where I get this sort of like mind-blowing moment of like somebody drops something and I'm just like, oh my God, how have I never thought about that this way? And the idea that no problem is someone else's problem is like just perfection. Because you're right. It's one of those things where it's not to say that you need to like throw yourself into every single project, because some of them really there might be, kind of too many cooks in the kitchen already.
Yeah.
But if somebody approaches you and wants help for something, treating it like, that's above my pay grade. No, it's not something that's worth my time. Whatever it's never going to look right to anyone else, right? That's not a good look for anyone. Mm-hmm. And even if the best help you can offer is, you know what, I don't think I'm the right person to help with that. I'm not sure I can bring anything else to the project. That is always way better than saying no.
Yeah. And sometimes you may not have solution to everything, but with that mindset, you might be able to connect that person with the right person or the right team. Hey, wait a second, I can't help, but I know this person who is exactly the person you should be talking to.
Absolutely. I cannot. That's so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so to keep us moving here. Oh, and I do want to highlight for y'all, we are going to reserve the last 10 minutes of today's chat to talk a little bit more in depth about Facebook's company culture and some of their open roles. So if you have questions regarding those things, how can I get hired, all that kind of stuff, make sure you save them for those last 10 minutes. But that means that we have 10 minutes less than we normally do to do Q&A. So I'm going to try and keep us moving as quickly as possible, but just know that if you have a question and you want to make sure you ask it, jump on that. We don't want to, I really hate to, kind of get wound down to the end of the chat and then all of a sudden people have questions and we don't have time to address them. And they're so awesome, guys. So please feel free to do that. Just make sure if you are coming off mute, you only come off mute when you are actively speaking. It's like the biggest thing that we kind of need to keep an eye on. So all right, so the next question we were asked, I thought was really interesting as well. This person wanted to know, what are some of the most important skills needed to step into a management role? And if you don't possess those skills already, how can you consciously work to develop them? And I think this is going to be different for every position, every industry. But in your experience, what are some of those like really core foundational skills that a manager needs to have?
That's a great question, and I would love to actually share my own experience. But before I do that, there are some obvious ones, right? You all might have heard it's very obvious. Like some of it is like that forward thinking and planning, right? You have innate. So even if you're thinking as a manager role or you are a tech lead, this just comes naturally to you, and you just get better and better, like practicing that muscle and skill set. You have deep passion for problem solving, right? Growing across the boundaries for the teams and really trying to get things resolved. You also believe in attention to detail, but also, when to go deep and when to get help from the other teams. The other most important thing is if you are trying to switch to the management role, also remaining calm under pressure. This is more of the soft skill. Before I answer more and some of the, is there a set of a recipe to the management role? There is none, but I want to share my personal experience. This was in 2005. I was part of a startup company. I was a tech lead in a software as a service. And my leadership team asked me to switch to management. And I very politely said, no, not that I was afraid. I just loved my hands-on technical role. And I've a lot of respect for the individual contributors, but my leadership team was pretty persistent. Shamla, you got to try this. And I said, okay, I was also a first time mom. So I was like, okay, two new things at the same time was maybe overwhelming. But I'm so grateful that I took that leap and, just took that journey, because quickly I realized the same year, the large company acquired our company, and I was asked to integrate four other startups into that larger company. What I realized was I deeply enjoyed leading and influencing more through others. I was very good at connecting people. And the other thing was I had to learn this muscle of stopping the urge to solve everything by myself. This is one of the fundamental mistakes when people are trying to move from IC to manager role. We want to go and help, right? But in the process, we are not giving that autonomy and people to take the risk. So that's one skill you have to build on early on. If you're early on in the management role, stop the urge of trying to solve everything, right? I deeply had the passion of seeing people around me growing and empowering them to do more, bring the best out of it. When I realized that this is what truly gave me joy and satisfaction, there was no turning back. Again, don't get me wrong, you can still grow as an individual contributor, but if you get a high out of making people around you do better than what they were doing 6 months ago, and you deeply enjoy mentoring them, coaching them, and developing them, then yes, those are the skills. Like you have the passion and you go and help the others. The other skills are communications. Now it's very broad term. What does communications mean, right? It's just not making sure everybody are informed, but really, really knowing your audience. When I say audience, sometimes the communications are to the team. So downward communication, upward communication, cross-peer, cross-organizational boundary communication, and customer. So that is one of the skills. And if you feel overwhelmed with that, this is where ask for mentorship and support. But it is super important to know your audience and communicate accordingly. The other thing as a managerial skill, this is more of a behavioral and soft skill. You'll have it innate if you love the management role, is empathy and being self-aware and listening. That's a muscle you have to build, because this is where when you switch from a tech lead, or you're more about sharing ideas and just presenting more. But in one of the skills for management role is that listening ability. And the other thing is building relationships across upwards and downwards.
I can't agree strongly with you enough. Like, you're right. This idea of especially building that communication, because like one of the best ways that you have a great manager is when they're not micromanaging, they are making all of the shifts that are needed to really support the team and encourage that growth, and really, like you said, empower each other to do, not only to do the best work possible, but also to grow in their own skill sets, in their own job function, in their career in general. And that's one of the things, like, obviously, it's clearly important to Facebook, and it's obviously one of our core values as well. And so it's one of the things that makes Power to Fly really, really glad to partner with Facebook, because, having that idea of trying to empower people so that everyone feels empowered, so that you don't feel trapped within like maybe a system or a hierarchy that isn't really helping you to be your best self.
Yep.
So I absolutely love that. We are getting some really great questions in the chat, so I'm going to take one of those now. Irina had said, how do you approach the personal development planning with your direct reports? How often do you recommend to have check-ins and follow-ups? And I think this is really important because, if you're trying, especially if you're trying to like identify what your management style is, or if you're trying to make a shift from what maybe the previous management style was as well, this can feel like a really gray area. So how do you recommend that Irina proceed with this?
Yeah, so I assume you are having the regular check-ins. So the personal development plan should not be like once in a year, right? And it should not be once in a week as well. So you have some tactical skills which the person has to do to get the day job done, right? So that should be part of your regular conversation. But I suggest, apart from your weekly check-in with your directs, like once a month, carve out like 30 to 45 minutes just to talk about what career aspirations are, what are your growth opportunities, and really see how you as a manager are helping that individual. Sometimes pairing up with another peer of yours or the peer of the individual and creating the opportunities for that person. So first, foremost, have the conversation. You should absolutely know the individual's strengths and weaknesses. And this comes to the point where you have created a very approachable environment where the individual is able to have that conversation with you and encourage that. I hate to use the word weaknesses. Everybody has developmental areas. As I said, the whole concept of growth mindset is the learning, right? So you embrace that journey, and that's how the personal career conversations start. First, having an open conversation. Second, clearly articulating what are the developmental areas, and you as a manager and a mentor for that, creating not only the opportunity so the individual can practice those skill set, but also creating buddy system so that individual is growing and developing on those skill sets needed for the personal growth.
Awesome. Yeah. And that actually kind of dovetails into another question that just got asked. Elaine was wondering about that balance between pushing your direct reports versus letting them grow at their own pace. Because, sometimes managers are, maybe not ignoring, but like not really actively helping to develop somebody, or maybe they're kind of pushing in a way that's not actually helping. So have you found, a good way to maybe like tell where that sweet spot is with direct reports, especially since, different people handle direction very differently?
Yeah. So I think it all boils down to like really the manager to understand the motives, like what motivates at the end of the day that individual. And then with that, like really knowing at a personal level, I'm not saying know the whole history and the personal life, but definitely know what is that really motivates the individual, what environment does the individual thrive, and then the balance, right? You don't want to like somebody who's already overwhelmed, so you need to know the personal situation as well, who's already overwhelmed and you're pushing hard on like not switching your styles. I want to hit on this is super important. Communications to your directs or peers according to the style. You have to switch. You have to know as a manager when to switch. For some, the direct feedback is what they need. But you as a manager, if you have built enough trust relationship, the person will be open and you would know. Some folks, maybe the direct is too much and they go in a shell. So you have to know when to tone down, when to tone up, and really knowing what motivates. For some people, the critical feedback is important, but don't start with that because that might push that person already who is very overwhelmed into a shell. So that is how I have drawn balancing and like really knowing. And sometimes my directs have been very, very direct to me and saying, Shamla, I just want you to be open and direct. So I have switched my communication style and feedback according to that. For some, it is through the organic journey of learning what motivates and what kind of environment these individuals will thrive, and shifting my communications and feedback style accordingly. And that will organically create the balance. What I think, I forget the person's name, she was asking.
Elaine. Yeah.
Elaine, yes.
Thank you for that question, Elaine. We also had one more follow-up before we jump back into other questions. You had mentioned, that having that feedback once a year is not, not ideal. If you have a manager that is, kind of sticking just to that once a year feedback, rotation, is there a way, like a better way to kind of approach that and ask for more constructive feedback more regularly? Or is that something that, no matter how you phrase the question, is maybe not likely to lead to the result that you want?
Let me ask a clarifying question. Is the question the manager prefers a once a feedback, or is it the individual prefers the once a year feedback?
It sounds like the manager is the one sticking to the once a year feedback thing. It also says that they might be considered maybe a little bit more of an absentee manager. It doesn't say if it's somebody that's like stretched thin necessarily, but in my experience, at least, that's usually what one of the underlying causes for this kind of situation is. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Oh yeah, they're looking at somebody who's the manager that is sticking to a once yearly, and that
Yeah.
they're speaking from the
So
position of managing.
yeah, I truly believe, and as much as it might sound that, realistically, is it possible? You are the controller of the destiny when it comes to your career, progression, the career conversation. Now, definitely, at the company you're working, your manager holds a pretty powerful role in helping and enabling you to get there. But I would challenge that you need to have that support system, which is just not your manager, right? This is where I will encourage, have somebody even outside the company, right? What your aspirations are. You have to build skills which will help you to grow as an overall individual. And who knows, it's just not that company. You want to have that 5-year, 6-year vision where you want to get to. And sometimes that's just not possible, having those conversations just with your manager. As much as it's needed in your current role, but I would encourage, have that support system outside as well as outside of your team. I would also encourage you can have an open conversation with your manager. Hey, I understand this is more of a yearly thing, but I would appreciate, with where I'm heading, that I would like at least a quarterly check-in or a monthly check-in. The rest of the time we can talk about strategy and stuff, but this is super important to me, and I would appreciate if you can. And if the manager says, I'm too busy, you can always have a buddy or a mentor who can be the person's peer or somebody in your team or outside of the organization. And I get mentorship and advices. I don't call officially a mentorship. Sometimes I'll go to one leader on one particular area, right? And then that's it. That's all I needed that particular quarter. Sometimes I'll go to another leader or a peer for, just brainstorming a raw idea I might have.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. There's a lot of people chiming in with similar asks in the chat, so hopefully this helps them a lot. And I want to say thank you to everybody that's chiming in. Please keep those questions coming. You're welcome to come off mute if you'd like to ask directly, but you don't have to. Totally fine to put your questions or comments into the chat thread. All right. Oh, go right ahead, please.
This is Ed Masood. Actually, I'm here in Southern California. I have a question, Shamla, for you. I am a senior manager. I am, first of all, grateful for Facebook encouraging a lot of women to step up in this position. I have actually individually done that myself for my team. I have some women that actually successfully, came into this role, but I had others that I encouraged from my direct reports, and they were struggling. They have the formula, they know what it takes to do it. If you were to advise a couple of tips on success, because this may not be for everybody, because once you step into this role, you realize that management is not something you want to get into, or sometimes you may be confused or wishy-washy. Yeah, it is for me, but I need to do something different. So if you were to basically describe a couple of recipes for success for individuals, because in my role, I've seen women actually really succeed, or people from my direct report, they're really successful managers now. But there are some that are kind of wishy-washy if this is their forte, if this is they want to succeed, or this is the area they want to grow. So what would be a couple of points that you want to add for success if somebody wants to step into this role?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for asking that question. And also really, really great to hear like how you have been an advocate and ally, especially for some of the women managers or ICs in your team. So we need more of, keep doing what you're doing. So I think, as I mentioned, I can vouch for how we kind of think about this at Facebook, and I've seen in the other leadership roles I have. At Facebook, at least I know it's not about women or men, right? You can have an IC path and still be successful and grow as much as parallel to a VP, right? So that is enabled at Facebook, and you can have a successful path on the management. Sometimes, as I said, it's a journey and it's self-realization. As I said, for me, I denied to take on the management role about 16, 17 years ago until I went on that path. So that self-realization is super important. Sometimes the individuals might say, this is not my forte, maybe I'm successful. But if you have enabled that open conversation, and you are supporting the people in the right way, that individual should come to you and say that, hey, wait a second, I tried this, but this is not my thing, but I want to switch back. So create that open environment. And you asked me, tips for success. Again, as I said, there is no secret sauce. It's truly building a mindset of believing in the learning. Sometimes the learnings might lead you to completely different. Sorry, somebody. You're muted, Meg.
So sorry. It looks like someone came off mute accidentally. So no worries there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for addressing that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did. And thank you so much for addressing the question, Shamla.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So I want to kind of take, kind of run with that idea that was just introduced with that question. There were a lot of people that wanted to know how you can know yourself if you are ready to kind of pick up some more responsibilities to move into that leadership role, and how you can kind of prove to partners, managers, your kind of your org hierarchy that this is something you want to do. There were a lot of people that asked about this in terms of imposter syndrome, or how to kind of fight that either negative or at the very least unhelpful self-talk that a lot of us, especially women, are kind of conditioned into. So what is your approach to this, both from knowing for yourself as well as how to kind of clearly convey that idea to the people around you that need to know?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So let me answer how do you prove to your partners, right? Because they play a very important role when it comes to your scope growth or, your growth. So I will share some experiences which were clue to me, and that happened organically, not that I was going and asking for expansion, but some of the clues which I learned early on, and I use this for mentoring others. People come to you for help organically. People want to work with you, right? Your support and as advice from time to time in that area is well respected. And it happens as you become that go-to person. And they really lean on you to solve complex problems. So this is how you prove to your partners. And I told the concept, my solo motto had been, no problem is someone else's problem. And your partners will see that and they will support. Oh, I want to have this person helped me in this situation and was able to navigate through this complex situation very easily. Let's have this person for the next big project. The names just kind of, they remember that. The other is your ability to listen to your customers and peers and team members with empathy and getting that big picture, right? Just don't be bogged down with one small area. Try to get that big picture. And in that process, you earn the trust, you earn the respect, and people really, really want to work with you. Sometimes they may not even tell you. I hear from my manager, hey, wait a second, this collaboration is going great. And I want you to continue to go this path. And how do you scale your leadership, right? There was also a question, how do you show this to your manager? So one thing is, first of all, you're having that conversation. Sometimes you might have to organically have that conversation with your manager that I'm ready to take on more. And sometimes you want to show that you have a succession plan. Succession plan is, don't become that single point of failure. This is the biggest mistake a lot of people do early in their career. And also when somebody switches from IC to a management role, and letting go of things to create room for new learnings for yourself and new opportunities for yourself. This is super important. And it'll happen. You'll learn, right? You'll have that urge of going and solving yourself. Or, oh, wait a second, I'm the subject matter expert. I need to be in every decision making. But your leadership team actually is not looking for that. How have you made that job easy for yourself so you can walk away from that very easily and pick up on the other? Because your manager will not give you more broader responsibility if everything else you were doing is just going to fall apart just because you walked away from that area. And also show, especially the leader, when you're having this conversation with your manager, also show how you have grown people around you. How are you bringing others together? That is super important, especially as you go up in your career ladder. It's no more like that small area you were supporting 2-3 years ago. How are you able to navigate? But in the process, you have grown the people around you. So people get motivated, they get inspired, and then you are able to scale up yourself as well. Yeah, and how you solve some really complex functional challenges independently without your manager's help, and build the trust with your partners.
I love that. And you're right. It's one of those things that can feel really scary to start, kind of flying that up the flagpole and letting people know like this is something you're interested in. But like anything else, people don't know what you're thinking or what your goals are if you don't tell them. So they might think there are no goals, or they might, infer incorrectly what they think you might be going for. But it's, you're not going to get where you want to go alone. Nobody ever does. So it's really important to kind of make sure that that is known, that this is something you're working towards, both so you can, expose yourself to those opportunities, as well as so you can, kind of get other people to start thinking about you that way. It seems like what you're going for, Shamla, is an extension of the idea that you dress for the job you want,
Yes.
and start acting like, like a manager, before you have that. Obviously, not in like the kind of power trippy ways, like
Yeah.
do so within the bounds of your teams. But yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's so great and so applicable, because we also had people asking about these ideas and the I'm not ready feelings in terms of people from
Oh,
underrepresented genders. So, or underrepresented. So, you've got people from the trans community, or people, if you are, even if you're a male in a female dominated world, most teachers that are male are pretty heavily outnumbered still. So it's one of those things that's really important. If you feel comfortable and you feel safe making yourself more visible for these types of leadership opportunities, do it. You might be that person that standing up makes someone else feel like this is something they can do as well.
yeah.
So, if you are one of those people that feels safe, do it so you can help everyone else like you that really, is having a hard time with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Yeah.
love that.
I just want to add, I think you also asked like the imposter syndrome, right? So the way so imposter syndrome, if you start thinking, it's not a bad thing, because you will have imposter syndrome when you took on a new role which you had never worked on. I had that imposter syndrome every new role, because it was in a new industry. The learning curve was very steep. But when that comes, if you build that support system, women, I mean, the hard reality is they are super critical on themselves. They need the validation little bit more than maybe my male peers I might have seen. So again, if you switch your mindset, and like imposter syndrome is good to have, you will have that learning curve. So that's when the imposter syndrome will be high. But as I said, if you focus on the journey and the learning, you will surpass that. And you might have imposter syndrome for the next big new thing you're going to take on. So that is actually key for taking on stretch goals, I say, right? And stretch goals, you will feel this from time to time, but how you build the courage or the muscle, training your mindset that this will be high initially, but I'm going to overcome.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. The chat is absolutely blowing up with how people are having such a great time and so many valuable things to be learned from you. So thank you so much for this. All right, so I'm going to keep us moving because we only have about 8 minutes left in what we're, the chat so far with this, and then we're going to move more into more information about Facebook's company culture, as well as some of the open roles and employment ops. So one of the things I wanted to ask is, a lot of people had questions regarding remote work. So they wanted to know your opinion on the idea that working remotely, so not being like physically visible, could limit your chances for growth. So is it smarter to work in office where possible to maintain that visible profile for yourself? Or is it, is there some way around this that we're not really thinking of? Is there a different way of looking at remote work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we all know that the pandemic has proven that the hybrid models of remote work are likely to persist. It's not going to go away. What COVID did is, because many tech companies had to embrace everybody is working from home, it was a playing field, right? It was an equal field. But as we embrace hybrid, it's going to become very obvious folks who decide to go to office versus folks who are going to be dialing in from home. This is where, to the leadership team and the managers, the real culture, embracing the culture of inclusiveness. There is a new dimension now that's going to surface in the tech industry. How do you create an inclusive environment where your team is going to be in the hybrid? Personally, for me, I think what has helped is, I feel I've been super productive during COVID. And I've seen, for a lot of introverts, this has been like a boom. Like, even I've heard from my friends' kids, like teenagers who are introvert, they're loving this. I also say that embracing and taking some of the advantages, focusing on that has helped. For example, the digital world we are in, that has helped some of us to be more visible. I talked about, you asked me, Meg, at the beginning, have you done these events? I think I was able to do a lot more, 4 times more than when I was able to do in person. And the scale has been larger because with in person, a lot of, especially the working women, had to struggle to even show up at a late evening event because they had kids classes and all that. So I am a very opportunistic person, or optimistic person is the right word, looking at the positive sides. But there are also the other caveats, like the leadership presence sometimes is more felt when you're in person. But I think the last 18 months has given us a completely new perspective and dimension that you can still be successful being remote and taking advantage of some of the digital aspects what we have, all these Zoom meetings and all the other platforms, taking advantage of that to showcase your work and to showcase and being more visible to your peers and coworkers.
Absolutely love that. We got a lot of people chiming in about the idea of imposter syndrome stuff that you mentioned previously as well. So thank you to everyone for these great questions and great responses. All right. So one thing I want to make sure we highlight here, or that we get to touch on, is the idea of collective leadership. There were a lot of people that asked questions about kind of expanding on that idea.
Yeah.
One person even said, there are so many directors, VPs, and CE somethings with differing agendas. So is there a strategy or multiple strategies to help them lead as a unified team, as opposed to being kind of separately siloed out into areas where you might be redoing the work someone else has already done, or undermining someone else's work without even realizing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, what is collective leadership at the end of the day? We know we are in an era, especially in the larger companies, you might see at a larger scale, because of the large scope, there is no one leader can just have the responsibility of everything. So collective leadership, if you compare in layman simple terms, is more like a team sport analogy, like a rugby or football, rather than an individual sport like tennis, right? I'm not saying each have their own pros, but in collective leadership, you are really focusing on the unique strengths each leader or each team is bringing to the table, right? The decision making is not more like a top down, right? There's this, I'll share an example. I'm actually in middle of a very highly visible but a cross-functional project. Facebook launched Shops last year during COVID. It touches so many teams. Without respecting your peers, without trusting the decision making which happens in each of the orgs involved, that is the heart of collective leadership. Like, you're really honoring and trusting individual roles and responsibilities, and then making sure that you're creating win-win situation for the entire, all the organizations who are involved. That's what is collective leadership at the end. Now, there are few things which could be pros and cons, you can put it, like communications can be a little hard in collective leadership, but that is needed. I talked about, cross communicating down, communicating up, because there are a lot more players involved. So it might feel like the decision making is slow, but you also have a big pro. You're removing the single point of failures when you have this collective leadership come together. And then you're really people contribute based on, what are the unique strengths I touched upon and talents, and also creates opportunity for the others who are working on the project to develop on the skills which they may not have. So you look upon somebody else, like, I don't have this talent, but I can look upon that person in that entire leadership team.
I absolutely love that. Okay, so I want to keep us moving, but I want to ask one more question before we jump into our other question set. This one, it was okay. So I'm going to make an executive decision here, y'all, and hopefully this will be as interesting to you as it is to me. But this person had asked about, they wanted to know, have you ever felt the need or the instinct for competition, especially with other women in your field? And if so, how did you transform it into admiration and empowerment? Now, I find this is something that's really important, not only as a team member, but also as a manager, because I feel like I look back on some of the managers, like the bad managers I've had, and this idea that they want you to improve to the point you're useful to them, but not move past them or beyond them into a different team can feel like kind of subtext there, right? Nobody comes out and says it, but it might feel that way. So is this something that, you've ever had an issue with, or you've seen in someone else and had to, kind of deal with it that way?
Yeah, so you're saying like, instinct for competition from other women, either peers or, they're in similar leadership team. So if I said no, I would be lying. So it's very human nature, right? So when it's basically when there is a small pool, you want to stand out. And often women as women, we might want to stand out even in a group of women.
Well,
So
and it's, you get, there feels like this overarching like societal mores of like, there can only be one, right? There can
yeah,
only be one person that shines, especially when you are from that underrepresented group. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, you're
no.
completely reading my mind here.
So let me say, like, I shared my childhood, right? So I was traveling all over India. I would be the only South Indian kid in a North Indian school because we were all over. So the most important thing is assume good intent, and you have to build this muscle, right? You always can't be self-critical. Oh, wait a second, this person is always competing, with me. So try to learn where they're coming from, but also like, how do you empower them? So once I flipped early in my career, like, how do I bring along more? So if we have more women in tech, then this will like slowly go away. Maybe in a decade from now, it will be the other equation where we'll have more women in tech than we had men. But again, that's a very aspirational goal. But I think it's most important is I can share some examples where I had speaking opportunities to be a keynote speaker. And recently, just this year, I declined that and I said, hey, wait a second, how about we do a panel where I can bring along a few other women managers who are in my organization? And first, I'm creating visibility. But the second is this is a much powerful thing when the audience see this is like a bunch of awesome, successful women leaders from this org. I want to go and work in that. So you have to play that like, and my peers see that, right? You're creating opportunities for the others. This has a very, very positive impact on your career or the way people will come to you for help. And it has a long lasting thing. So you have to like slowly embrace. The other thing is mentorship and coaching circles. That's something we started 2 years ago in one of the Facebook infrastructure group. I led few when we were doing a pilot, and I encouraged many other women, senior ICs and women to go and attend. And quickly I said, wait a second, why don't you actually not just attend, but some of you have the right skills to even lead some of the coaching circles. And last year we had 5 women for production engineering who led the coaching circles. Isn't it very powerful? It's so empowering actually to create these opportunities around. This is how you build trust and admiration. It doesn't have to be in words or anything. These actions will have a long lasting effect. And when you see it's paid forward or paid back, right, however you want to say it, then they will do the same. They will emulate you and they will do it for the next set of 5 women leaders or ICs. Then it just becomes like a chain reaction. We're very hard to like resist not to do it that way.
Yes, and you're right. It's absolutely, if we want to see the landscape change, we need to be making these changes. It can't always be top down. It needs to be something that's important to everyone.
Yep.
And I think you make a really good point, right? That if you kind of flip the idea and stop thinking in terms of there can only be one successful person here, or even in terms of like that person's competing with me, so if I'm not competing with them, that's stupid. It's not. You helping and trying to encourage people, you're going to either kill them with kindness or at minimum show to everyone else around you that you are supportive, even if this person is, obviously kind of cutthroat or out for their own good or whatever. You're
Yep.
not, doing that and trying to help build other people up is not showing them your soft underbelly. It's not opening you up for problems. It is encouraging people to view you as a strong leader, even in the face of people that don't really want to go with what the plan is, or seemingly are detrimental to the group.
Totally.
So really great. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to switch gears here today. And I'm so sorry if y'all asked amazing questions. So if you asked a question and we weren't able to get to it, I have saved all those so we can pass those on to the Facebook team later. So let me share my screen here. I want to show you this because this is what you're seeing here is a a questionnaire that we had sent to Shamla prior to today's session. So I want to touch on this because some of these answers are absolutely amazing. So let's talk a little bit about, the company culture and your favorite part of working at Facebook. You said move fast and be bold. These are obviously things that Facebook encourages in their, in their efforts to empower women and empower their workforce. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, or how that plays into your favorite part of working at Facebook?
Absolutely. Being bold, what does that mean at the end of the day, right? I touched upon it. The growth mindset was we are building great things, but that won't happen if we don't take risks, right? The biggest risk is if you don't take any risks, right? So things are changing quickly. And I think that has kept us to innovate. Like, I'm super proud, like when we entered COVID lockdown, we actually launched a couple of new, products, during the COVID. So that was only possible being bold. What does move fast means, right? The things are changing so rapidly across the industry. Like, who knew that these small businesses needed the digital platform, more online presence, right, than the shops they had. So moving fast, like listening to the industry, and that is another culture we embrace, like, making sure that we're learning from the mistakes quickly, but we are also making that big, bold movements, which is putting us ahead in the industry.
I absolutely love that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your tips for someone who's interviewing, because we got a lot of questions with people wanting to know, what are the ideal qualifications for this, this role, or what can I do to get into that role, or are you hiring in, this space? So let's talk a little bit about the top tips for interviewing, and then we'll switch gears and talk about some of your highlighted open roles.
Yeah, first of all, we are hiring big time. I mean, just in production engineering, infra, and across tech, if you go to the Power to Fly website, which Meg mentioned at the beginning, please go there. We are hiring in many locations. We are also encouraging some roles as remote positions, so that flexibility is also there. And typically when somebody approaches like, particular role, the recruiting team is actually your partner. They want you to succeed in the interview. They will give you a bunch of resources to make sure that, you not only your competency and skill set that will be evaluated if you're applying for a, especially on the tech role, there is a certain process we have. But what we look for, especially in any role, the cultural fit. So there are different axes, cultural, your way of problem solving. It's not about like you solve this problem. How did you go about problem solving? Which touches on various aspects, the cross functional collaboration. There is some behavioral things we see, and then building relationships. Facebook is huge on building relationships. Even like when we have new people, we ask them to go slow, to go fast later. We want them to focus on building relationship, because there is no way, no single person will know everything. But building that relationship will allow you to like go to like, how do you navigate a big project? And then, of course, in the technical side, like, driving large projects and competency, there is the code. If it's a software engineering or production engineering, there is a coding and a tech screen, which happens. But I think overall, we try to look at all key aspects: cultural fit, problem solving, building relationships, driving large projects, and then the competency, which is very, very specific to that role.
Excellent. Okay, so we have a lot more questions of people jumping off, asking about job openings for non-tech, job openings for remote, job openings outside the US. I'm sharing a lot of links in the chat thread here, so where you can go to Facebook's company page on powertofly.com. You can search a ton of their roles there. There's also, I'm sure, many more on Facebook's own careers website. But I want to, before we run out of time today, I want to switch over into talking about some of the open roles. I'm going to share links with you with y'all in the chat to where you can look at these jobs specifically. But are there any jobs on this list that you would like to highlight? Or I think you had some team members that were on the call as well.
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to speak on about this?
Yeah, so these are very specific to the ones which like I like very, very closely work, but these are no way the only roles. There are a lot of other roles which are outside of infra, but maybe some in project management, some in product management, data science, and data engineering. But the production engineering manager role, the organization I'm representing is in production engineering, which helps to build and deploy large-scale systems and make sure the platforms are running reliability at scale. So those are the PE roles are specific to the organization I'm representing. But there are all a bunch of software engineering jobs and system engineering jobs on the infra side, with the scale at which and the pace at which we are going. So we definitely need great talent to come and join and help us and work on some of these challenging projects we have ahead of us.
Awesome. Now, we have a lot of people asking kind of similar questions, but is there a preferred way to apply to roles at Facebook? Is there anyone specific they should reach out to kind of make that initial introduction, apart from just filling out an application? Or is there a certain, protocol y'all have for following up once the applications have been submitted?
Yeah, the recruiting team is very, very good at follow-ups, like especially the initial one. Like if there is a very close match, there will be a follow-up, happening. I would say like within like 2 days, I've seen that happens. But especially for the production engineering one, we have a recruiting, and I don't know if post this call, if there is a way we can share or put it on the website, we are happy to just put a link there on the open roles. And you can work through that recruiter. But each role will also have a point of contact, and they are pretty on top of it, communicating and getting on with the candidate, provided there is a skill set match and most of the requirements are met.
Great. And then we do have a lot of questions from people asking stuff about, more details on your networking topics that we talked about, stuff about, how to get noticed with your resume. We have a ton of chats on that, mostly community stuff. So please feel free to check out the link that I just shared. You can look at our archives. You can also check out our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of great information there that will help you in your applications to Facebook and hopefully be successful, be one of our amazing Power to Fly success stories. All right. So I know hopefully we're not, you don't have to jump for a hard stop, but I know we're at time. I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Shamla, for taking time out of your day to spend with us. This was absolutely amazing. I'm just really glad that I got to spend the afternoon with you. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our audience before we end for today?
Yeah, first of all, really, really glad to be part of this. I mean, this is through these journeys and experiences. If we can share, the platform enables that, and it creates hope for others. If I could do it, there are a lot of other people who look like me can do it as well. So it's important these platforms enable that. And as I mentioned, please check out the roles. We have a lot of open roles. If you feel, and connect with me on LinkedIn, I would encourage that as well. But definitely reach out and visit the website where the roles are open. And most importantly, I don't know if there is a way to share, but the growth mindset, definitely read about. There are a bunch of podcasts, there is a bunch of books. Quick ones, I can quickly say 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, 5 a.m. Club. I was not a morning person, but few things have changed and a routine. I can say I wake up at 5:30 now. I never could wake up before 6:30. And Dare to Lead from Brené Brown. And there are some really awesome podcast links I suggest you hear, because it's all about success is not about everything going perfect. It's also embracing failures when things are not going well. And that is the crux of what growth mindset is.
Oh, thank you for that. We're happy to include links to those podcasts and books you mentioned. I also threw a link there in the chat to where you can connect with Shamla on LinkedIn as well. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who attended today's session, all of the great questions that were submitted prior to this session as well. They were absolutely amazing. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you who joined us for this chat. We're so happy that you spent the afternoon with Power to Fly. That's going to lead us into that's going to close us out for today. But I am just so glad that we've gotten to see so many new participants. Please be sure to take advantage of, some of the great chats we have upcoming. I know that there were tons of people that want to hear from you again, Shamla. So hopefully we'll be able to schedule a part 2 so that we can keep, bringing some of your great experiences and great advice to the larger community. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much again for having me here. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Awesome. I'll make sure we
Thanks.
include those links in our email, and we'll see you all next time. If you don't join us for chats tomorrow, I hope y'all have a safe and happy weekend, and we will see you back here soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Shamla.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.